let's drill down into markets activity over in Kenya right now, recapping on things as they played out yesterday. Of course, remember, Kenya's stock market has seen consistent gains since last year, and that on the back of good company performance and investors returning after a slump in 2011. We had the NSE 20 share index having rallied 9% so far this year, extending 2012's 29% rise. Yesterday, Kenyan stocks rose, and that on the prospects of a peaceful transfer of power within the political movement there, with the main NSE 20 share index rising by 0.5%. We had the index just below the 4,534 point mark. Safaricom, the country's leading telecom service provider and the most traded stock on the bourse, rising 2.6% in yesterday's session to 5 shillings 95 a share. The stock touched this year's high of 6 shillings during the session. Demand on Safaricom continuing to build up in anticipation of good full-year earnings. On the currency front, the Kenyan shilling hit its strongest level against the dollar in 18 weeks yesterday after a presidential vote passed off peacefully the day before reversing its gains to end broadly flat by the close of the session. Counting in the closely contested election, the first presidential poll since a disputed vote in 2007 that unleashed a wave of tribal bloodshed, is expected to be slow, with a final result not seen until later today at the earliest. In that context, we've got the local unit sitting at 86 shillings 30 to the greenback. Let's get into some analysis of these markets now with Ted Macharia, who's an investment analyst over at AIB Capital. Thanks so much, Ted, for joining us this morning. Well, things seem to be pretty tempered right now, and that with much of the market still waiting those election results. Take us through the mood on the ground right now.
Morning, Alishia and David. The elections, we held them on 4th, which was Monday. Obviously, we started on a very low start with the attack of police officers in Mombasa, but we were quickly able to calm the situation. Polling went on relatively well, with just a few isolated hiccups here and there, but all in all, the process went on peacefully. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, which is the electoral governing body, has had some few delays in releasing the results. So as of yesterday, they announced that they would need physical confirmation from polling stations by the returning officers, which will arrive in Nairobi, the headquarters for tallying, today. So we expect very concrete numbers today. All in all, what that has done is just raised a few fears, a few eyebrows. In between the wait, there has been a lot of anxiety building up, but the situation has been very safe, has been very peaceful.
It's anxiety and uncertainty, Ted, that seems to have had an impact on the local unit specifically, because we had some uncertainty around whether or not there'd be an outright winner, and that seeing the shilling clawing back some of the gains that it managed to see filter through in yesterday's session early on against the dollar.
Yes, as you said, yesterday early morning, the whole process was still going on very well. The shilling made some gains. In the afternoon, there were some delays in tallying, which later resulted in the IEBC making the decision to announce the results later today. And we saw the shilling lose against the dollar in the afternoon session. So yes, that anxiety has been building up. But the general mood is that of peace. The leaders have been calling for calm, and business in Nairobi has been picking up today morning.
Yep, a lot of that focus on the kind of results that have been filtering through and what's yet to come, Ted. I was chatting about Safaricom a little earlier and the kind of rise we've seen on that share price on the back of anticipation of good results set to hit the market. So what are you anticipating in that regard, given the kind of earnings we've seen broadly filtering through in Kenya?
We have seen earnings that have been released in late February have been up by about 18% in general. Obviously, the banking sector and insurance sectors have outperformed, say, the manufacturing sector, which has been hit by regional growth problems in Uganda and Tanzania. As regards to Safaricom, their prospects still remain very good, very optimistic. Despite a rate cut, the MTR cut by CCK, the Communications Commission of Kenya, the company is still poised to do very well. They have diversified their revenue streams, They have built their cloud computing and data segments, and so they have cushioned themselves from the shrinking margins of the voice business. So all in all, Safaricom market expectations are high for their end year profits.
When it comes to Mumia Sugar, we've had the markets not as optimistic about its prospects, and yesterday some bounce back coming through after the sell-off we've seen on that share price. We've had that counter managing to gain 8.3% by the close of yesterday's session. It's now sitting at the 4.55 mark. Run us through the reasons behind that uptick yesterday. Was it a case of that share being oversold?
We have seen Mumias shed about 16% in the month of February after announcing their loss for the half year. That upswing, that momentum might have meant that the counter had bottomed out. But the prospects for Mumias are looking a little bit grim in the short term in terms of cane supply and cane production. There is a little bit of there's a shortage in cane supply and cane production right now. So investors are picking up on that. We do not see it picking very much more momentum in the coming few sessions, but it would have meant that the counter had bottomed out at around 4 shillings.
In the energy and petroleum space, Kenyan Cobalt making headlines. We had that share price trading lower. We've had the share price dropping by as much as 33.6% during the session yesterday, and that in the aftermath of the cancellation of its deal with Puma Energy on Friday. Take us through what you're making of prospects for this company moving forward now that that deal is no longer in the pipeline, Ted.
Ideally, the investors who were getting into the counter were speculative investors in the past about 1 year, who were hoping that the counter would rise from 13 shillings to 20 shillings, which was the price that Puma had targeted for the takeover. The chairman of the board announced termination of talks. Fundamentally, nothing has changed on Kenyan Cobalt. The situation still remains the same. They're still making good profits on sales. The distribution channels have increased. So what we are seeing now is the exiting of the speculative investors. Those are the people who are causing the free fall of the counter. But ideally, nothing has changed in as much as operations of the company are concerned.
So at 12 shillings 35, would you be a buyer?
Not exactly. I think there are better opportunities on the stock market right now, but at that current price, then you would consider it if you wanted to get into the energy sector.